Okay, so just waiting for the, okay. So welcome to part 2 of our introduction to searching for systematic reviews. Just some housekeeping. If you've, could you just please make sure you've muted your microphone? If you have any questions, we welcome the questions. If you could put them into chat while we're going through it. Vanessa, who's doing this with me as well, will be answering questions while I'm speaking, and I'll do the honors when Vanessa is speaking as well. We'll also make sure there's time for questions at the end, so if you want to hold on to the end, please do. And as I said, we are recording the session and we will make it available to you afterwards. So across the 2 workshops, these are the learning outcomes. We want to make sure you know what a systematic review is. Also make sure that you're aware of the different types or flavors of reviews and emphasize the need for a systematic approach. You should be able to start developing and reporting a suitable search strategy, be aware of other sources of information, know how to manage your results, and most very importantly, also know how to locate the full text of the articles you want to read. At the last session, if you weren't there, we worked on developing a question for review, talked about the importance of scoping researches. We talked about how you need to develop your protocol, the importance of using Prisma, and then using a framework to start developing your search. And at the end of the search, we ended up with a draft of a search strategy. And the aim of the first part of this session, the aim is to sort of how you can then transmit or transform this first draft of your search strategy into a search strategy that will work as effectively as possible in the databases. So once you've got your original keywords out there, you should be using all the insights that you've developed so far from doing your scoping searches to further develop your search. The advice that I've been given is to try avoiding too many different concepts, but making sure that you have enough keywords to fully describe your concept so that you can fully search for that as possible. It's important to remember that your search strategy is going to be a blend of both keywords and mesh terms. So you could have the same word in as a keyword as a mesh term. So just be careful of that. Okay, so as I said, this is the first draft of our search. One of the things I suggested, if you were at the first session, if you were doing one, to do the same or produce your current search strategy in this kind of a format, and we'll show you then how you can develop that search for your own review that you're doing. Okay. So at this stage, you should have an idea of your concepts. You should have developed at least an initial search strategy, and you should have an idea where you're going to search. So we're going to talk about some of the techniques and some of the tools built into the databases that you can use to further improve and develop that search strategy. But it's really important, not only at this stage, but at every stage, that you document everything. Your review has to be as transparent, it has to be as reproducible as possible. So you cannot presume or assume that people would know what you're talking about when you do something. You need to fully explain what you're doing or why you're doing it so they understand the logic of what you're doing. So make sure you get into the practice of recording the decisions that you've made and recording the search strategy. And keeping a research diary can be very helpful. It can help you to note your searches, help you keep track of what you've managed to get a copy of, what you've read, and what you can't get as well. So you know where you need to focus your energy. And it could be just something as simple as this, where you reported your search strategy and you have fed back information about each of your databases. And this is a tool to help you. It might not be necessarily how you report it in your review, but you'll have all the information to help you document and report your search strategy as effectively as possible. So once you've got your initial search strings together, you can then use some of the tools in the databases to properly develop your search strategy. And these, we're going to show you how these are and explain what benefits they bring to your search in the next few slides. The most fundamental building block of any search, whether it's for a scoping review or for your own assignments or personal use, is Boolean operators or Boolean logic. And these are used in any computer in any circumstance where you're searching for information. There's three of them: there's and, or not. And you can use these to narrow your search. You can use it to broaden your search. You can use it to exclude terms as well. So the most common one that is being used is the and operator. And even if you've never consciously used Boolean operators when searching, the next time you do a Google search, go look at the URL bar and you'll see little plus signs between the keywords that you've used when searching. These plus signs are the and operator. And as I said, you can use these to narrow down your search. So the example we have here is autism and child, and that will only return any articles where both of those terms are in the article. So it's really that little bit of red in the center there where the overlap is what you're going to see. So it's a really handy tool for narrowing down your search. And you will use this quite frequently when you are combining your different framework elements. So it's your population and your intervention and your outcome. If you have loads of different terms for the same concept, you can use the or operator. And in that case, as long as one of those terms is in an article, you'll see it in your results. So autism or autistic disorder, when you use the or operator, the database doesn't really care as long as there is one of them in there. So it's a great way of being really broad and really thorough. So you may see large numbers of results when you do the or operator. Don't worry, you are supposed to see large numbers. The numbers will decrease and filter down when you use the and operator to combine them. The last one that's not as used as often is the not operator. And the example we have here is autism, not Asperger's syndrome. And that will exclude everything to do with Asperger's syndrome. Even that little bit in the center there where they both overlap, you're not going to see anything from that area because you've explicitly said, I don't want to see anything with Asperger's syndrome. So as I said, you can use them to narrow, broaden, or exclude terms. And these are the fundamentals elements of your search strategy. So make sure that when you're writing and developing your search strategy, you put those in. It's also accepted practice that you will capitalize those. So it's very clear that it is a search operator rather than you're looking for the word or. Remember your phrase searching. So phrase searching is where you're searching for two or more words that have to occur together in a particular order. You dictate those by putting quotation marks around it. In some database, it's double quotation marks, and others it's single. So have a look at the help section of your database to see which you should be using to make sure you pick the right one. And by using the phrase searching, it helps you narrow the question, your search, I should say, rather. If you didn't put inverted commas around health policy, for example, it will search for health and policy, which is not as precise and as specific as health policy as a phrase. A similar technique is what's called proximity searching. And you can use this to find references that are related to each other, but they don't have to be next to each other in a particular order. You're more concerned how close they are to each other. For example, breast adjacent 3 cancer will return any records where breast and cancer appear within 3 words of each other, but you don't care which one comes first. And this, to get the maximum benefit out of this, you have to be familiar with the literature for that discipline to understand the relationship of those words to be as effective as possible. If you find that when you've developed your keywords, you have loads of keywords that are very similar, there might be plurals, there might be multiple endings, you can use a technique called truncation. And truncation will automatically tell the database to get all the endings for a common root. So the example we have here is medic with an asterisk. A medic for an asterisk will find you medic, medicinal, medicines, etc. It'll just keep going on and on until it's got all possible endings, but all you'll have written in your search strategy is medic with an asterisk. So it's a great way for simplifying your search, but still achieving the same aim. You will also be looking for words that can be spelled slightly differently. These are normally the difference between American English and Irish English. It can also be medical English as well. These are words like color, pediatric or pediatric. So you need to take out the letter or letters that differ, and then you can replace those with a symbol. Here we've gone for color with a question mark where the U should be, and that will get you color with the U and color without a U. One of the most common bits of feedback I have received from people like yourself who are doing reviews is that I'm happy with my keywords. I think I've got that nailed, but I'm still seeing loads of irrelevant articles. And that could be because, or a solution for that could be to limit your search to title and abstract. Because the reason why you pick title and abstract is that quite often this is sort of like a shop window for the author to attract people in to read the article. So they put their buzzwords and keywords there. You do need to be careful because on more than one occasion, somebody who's doing a systematic review said, like, I'm really happy with these number of keywords being in title and abstract, but I know this term is really, really important, but it doesn't appear in the title or abstract. So there's no point in putting it in there. I could lose important information. So it's not a black or white. You may need to have some in title or abstract and some not. It's really up to you and your knowledge of the topic. And thesaurus searching or control vocabulary, this might be something new to you. And the idea behind the thesauri, which are in a lot of the academic databases that you're using, is that they're put there to help you. Part of the challenge for searchers is to be fully aware of all the possible ways of describing the concept. You might be aware of definitions from your own local context, but maybe in America or other places they are giving it different names. PubMed, for example, or Medline, the thesaurus is MESH, stands for medical subject headings. Other databases have their own specific thesaurus. So you'd need to map your keywords to each thesaurus separately to make sure that you have fully explored the thesaurus terms. When you're running the search, your search is going to be a mixture of keywords and thesaurus terms. And it is really okay that if you have a keyword and a thesaurus term exactly the same, leave them both in. In the search, they're both searching the database differently, and both have their weaknesses and strengths. Searching for keywords are certain weaknesses, searching for thesaurus terms are certain strengths and weaknesses as well. But by using them both, you improve the strength and help remove the weaknesses. The other great thing about the thesauri, it will help you discover other keywords. So they should list the alternative terms that come under the approved term. And then you can say, if you don't have those already in your search strategy, you can then add them to your own search strategy to improve it further. In case you haven't seen it, I'm going to quickly go out and into PubMed and just quickly show you how MESH works. And if you haven't been to, apologies for those of you who are not doing a health-related one, but it is just one of the more commonly used databases. It's quite widely used. If you want to find your MESH database, it's at the bottom of the screen. Look for MESH database under Explore, and you go in. And each of the keywords you've already identified, you then search for it in the thesaurus. So for example, we had COVID-19 as part of our search strategy. So I'm putting in COVID-19 into MESH. I'm going to search. And you will get a number of different options. You will get a definition to help you decide what you should be picking. I'm going to go for COVID-19. I can check the definition and I click on the link because I want to see where it is in relation to other parts of the thesaurus. So halfway down the screen, you'll see a section called entry terms. So these are all the other ways of describing COVID-19. So you can see a lot of research for obvious reasons has been done on COVID-19. So you could decide, do I want to add any of these extra terms into my search strategy to be really thorough? You will see also there's ones like infection, SARS-CoV.2. Ignore ones like that where there's a comma, because those generally have been brought in because of the indexing in the database, but nobody, when they're writing an article, would just say infection, SARS-CoV-2. They'd have the one above it, which is SARS.CoV.2 infection. I hope that's clear. And then at the very bottom, we have our mesh hierarchy. All the databases work on a hierarchical basis. They'll be broader and narrower terms. So you'll see in bold is COVID-19. There's nothing underneath it in this case. If there was narrower terms, so narrower terms would be beneath it and indented to the right, you have to make the decision whether or not you want to include them. In a lot of databases, this is called exploding. You'll see a column for and a button for exploding, and that would include the narrower terms as well. In PubMed, it's a bit different in that it automatically includes the narrower term. So if I didn't want to include the narrower terms, I need to scroll back up and I tick do not include mesh terms found below this term in the mesh hierarchy. And there's another tick box where restrict to mesh major topic. And this relates to how much emphasis on this topic or concept I want to see in an article. If I'm happy with any little mention, I can leave it unticked. But if I think, no, this has to be a major part of what the article is about, I do have the option of ticking it. When I've made all my choices, I go back up to the top and there's a PubMed search builder on the top right-hand corner. If I'm happy that I've made all my decisions, just click on add to search builder. And you'll see then in the box, it says in inverted commas, COVID-19, and in square brackets, it says mesh. And the square brackets mesh tells the database to search for this term as a mesh term. If I had more terms in that same Pico element, I could put them in. If I want to go for coronavirus, for example, I can put it in, do the same process again, click on the link, make my decision. If I wanted to just confine it to coronavirus, I could do not include. And then I get the this option to join them with their Boolean operators. Because these are within the same Pico element, I'm going to select or add to search builder. And then I can just copy what's in the box and add them to my search strategy in my document that I've already created. And then I go on to my next Pico element and do the same process. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just minimize that and go back to the presentation. So based on everything I've been saying, so this is how I've amended the search that we ended the previous session on. So I've got my keywords I've identified in my phrases and I put my quotation marks around it. I've started using truncation. So I've gone at the bottom there, infection rate or infection rates, and I've got my mesh terms in. And because I've done all the work, I can actually literally copy and paste this search into a database and run the search. So if you want to spend a couple of minutes, if you've got that document out, if you want to just go into PubMed and see if you can get any mesh terms, but make sure you do your quotations and truncation where you think it's necessary. We'll give you a couple of minutes if you want to do that. And have we got any questions in chat? Okay. Has anybody, while you're modifying your own search, does anybody have any quick questions while we're waiting? For other databases, i.e. Web of Science, lots of other databases do have thesauri. Mesh is specific to PubMed or Medline. Web of Science doesn't have mesh terms. So if you're searching, or sorry, thesaurus terms, so if you're searching Web of Science, all you have to use is your keywords. So we're going to keep going because just conscious of time. So can I just get a thumbs up that everybody has been able to sort of improve their own search strategy? Or they're happy enough? Thank you. Brilliant. Well, once you've developed your search for your first database, you'll then need to modify it for the other databases that you searched. When you're doing a systematic review, you will not just use one database. No database, no matter how big, covers the entirety of the research in your area. So you will need multiple databases. So first of all, develop it for one, then go through the same process. You'll take the same keywords, go to your next database, look at the thesaurus for that database. And what you inevitably happens when you are going to multiple databases and going into multiple thesauri is that because the databases are doing their own thing and emphasizing their own interests, they may have different terms for the concepts that you have not already encountered. So if you do encounter new thesaurus terms that you haven't encountered when doing your first database, you need to add those new keywords into your existing search strategy. So for using the example we have already, going back into PubMed with those new keywords and then checking against Mesh again to see is there a match. So my hard-won advice is don't run the actual review search strategy until you have updated all the, or if you've gone through this process in the other databases and updated all your search. So if you've got questions about, is it one or two quotation marks, is it what's the symbols, look for the help section of the databases so that you can individualize your search strategy to run in the specific databases that you're doing. And then we've put a link there to information from Cornell University on translating across multiple databases as well. When you're actually running the search, do each framework element one at a time, and then use the database history to combine the various elements. So don't try and do everything at once. Just give yourself the space and just keep it nice and simple. Remember, when running your search, it's iterative. You won't get it perfect the first time. You'll take it so far, you'll test it, you'll check your results and take what you can out of those articles that you've recovered, particularly the really relevant ones, to see how can I take anything from those to further improve my search. So it will take a bit of time. And it's not really something that can be rushed, because this underpins everything that comes afterwards. And if you haven't got the proper search, everything else is undermined. And do test your search. Don't think because it worked in PubMed it's going to work in the other databases, or because you got to work in your first database. They're not all the same. So do practice, and then just sort of make sure that when you actually need to run the search for your review, it's not going to fail, and that the search is you're going to use it successfully. So I'm going to pass you over now to Vanessa. Sorry, Vanessa, I brought out of control there. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, so thank you, Dermot. I'm just going to go in here now and share my screen. Okay. Okay, so Dermot has been talking there about trying your search out in the different databases and refining your search and experimenting and testing. You may want to further refine your search to, say, particular age groups for your population, or for particular types of study. Well, the recommendation is don't use the database limits. The reason for this is because the articles aren't always indexed when they're put in straight away when they're put into the database. There can be a time lag, so you may not, if you're using the inbuilt databases in the limits in the databases, you could miss more recently published material. Also, because of human error, it could be an article could be incorrectly indexed. So what's recommended is that you use what are called search filters instead. So these are standardized strategies that help you identify the higher quality literature within many of the databases. So they can be very useful for narrowing your search to high quality study designs, such as observational studies, or TCs. They can be used for particular topics or particular age groups, say if you wanted to look at children or older adults. They are designed for different databases and interfaces, so just make sure that you're using the correct search filter for the database and interface that you're using. To incorporate the search filter into your search strategy, you need to run and enter the search filter exactly as it appears, save it as an extra search, and then use and to combine it to your final search of your components, or your of your final search. So you have to make sure that if you're using or adapting a search filter, that you report this as per your PRISMA statement. So these are just some of the places where you can find these tried and tested search filters to use to limit your search to particular study designs or particular age groups. So as well as searching for your literature within the databases, as some of you mentioned on Tuesday, when you're searching the literature, you also need to look at, you also should look at Grey Literature, and it's another source. So Grey Literature is the materials and research that's produced by organizations outside of the traditional commercial or academic publishing and distribution channels, such as reports, government documents, theses and dissertations, conference papers. So the organizations that will produce it will be government departments and agencies, NGOs, academic centers and departments. So it's an important source in systematic reviews because it contains information that isn't available through published sources. So this can be studies that, say, had a small amount of results or no results, which might not otherwise be disseminated, or it could be ongoing research that hasn't yet been formally published. So the inclusion of Grey Literature can reduce bias in your systematic review, and it also ensures the comprehensiveness of your systematic review. So these are some of the places where you can find grey literature. So you have grey literature specific websites, such as Linus for health literature. You have Grey Literature Report, and you have BASE, which is an academic search engine. You also have organizational websites. So if you think about your research question and what organizations would be relevant to it, and then you can check these websites. You also have library catalogs such as OneSearch, where you can search for theses, dissertations, official publications, etc. You can also search for grey literature using Google. And you can add more power to your Google search by searching within specific websites, by searching for specific file types, or using the advanced search in Google. But just a word of warning and caution around using Google. And Google's personalized search, the results aren't only based on the relevance of the web page to your search term or search terms that you've entered, but also on what websites you have looked at or someone else who's using the same browser has looked at and visited through their previous search results. So this means that the search results aren't ranked the same way for every user. So in order to turn off your personal search for all your searches, if you delete your browser search history, log out of your Google account, and then go to the My Activity page to remove all your Google services. So this is why when we say if you're searching for information, that Google and Google Scholar aren't necessarily the best places to use, because of this fact that not all, we don't know how Google searches. It's not transparent exactly how it searches. And also because of this issue with your results not necessarily being ranked the same way as the person sitting next to you when they search. Another method of searching for sources is to use hand searching. So this is for publications that may not be included in the databases that you are using, that you've identified as being relevant, or if there's a particular publication that you've identified as being very relevant, and you just want to make sure that you capture all the relevant articles in case they've been missed during the indexing. So it can identify articles that weren't indexed or that were indexed incorrectly. You also have snowballing. So this is where you use the reference list of the papers or the citations of the papers to identify additional research. So that's looking at the reference list, you're going backwards. So what did these authors use in their research? And looking at the citations, you're going forward to see what new research has used this. So Web of Science and Google Scholar are among the sources that have inbuilt tools which will help you track the citations to an article. Once you have completed your searches in each of your databases, then you need to determine exactly how many references you've obtained. So you can use a citation management tool. So EndNote is the one that's supported here in UCD, and you use that to extract all the results from your databases. Then you combine them together to get your total number of results from the literature, and deduplicate your references. And you need to make sure that you're deduplicating more than once. This is because authors' names and journal titles can be displayed differently as you move from one database to another. So it's not good enough to just dedupe the once. As well as citation management software, there also is other software which can help you with the systematic review and screening process. So you have Covidence, which is available as a subscription tool, and it is available in some of the schools in UCD. So it helps you with the primary screening and data extraction. You also have Rayan, which is a free online tool which can be used for independent screening and coding of studies. And then Kadama, which is a new tool to us. Actually, we've only just discovered it recently, and it's a free web tool facilitating the conduct and assuring of the documentation of systematic reviews. There also is the Systematic Review Toolbox. So this is an online catalog of tools that support the various tasks within the systematic review and wider evidence and thesis process. So this includes guidance and software tools that can be searched for by review type. So if you're doing a scoping review, you can look and see what guidance there is for scoping reviews, or what tools software tools you can choose, or for a specific stage in the review process. So for example, when you're developing your protocol or when you're doing your searching. And the link to that systematic review toolkit is just there on the slide. So once you have your results, then you need to start to apply your inclusion exclusion criteria. So this should be done by 2 independent reviewers. This is to reduce the risk of bias within the study. And then you should have a 3rd reviewer who is there to resolve any kind of conflicts or disagreements over whether an article is included or excluded. So this is where your inclusion-exclusion criteria come in. And this is why it's so important to ensure that these are clear and that they're unambiguous to reduce the number of articles over which you'll need to have this 3rd reviewer come in to say whether it's included or excluded. So you're applying your inclusion-exclusion criteria progressively as you go through your results, by title, by abstract, and by the full text. This is just a methods map from Sage Research Methods, which just shows you systematic review and where it sits in wider research. And there's links to content through Sage, chapters, etc., in their books on systematic reviews available. Okay, so when you have done your searches and you have your results, you need to access the full text of those articles. So you can use one search and to search by article title. And if that doesn't work and you don't get access to the article, you can also search by journal title and then go in and find the right volume, etc. to access the article. You can use Google Scholar and see if there are any free versions available. You can look on ResearchGate and see if it's available there. You can check to see if it's held in another library. If it's held in another library, you could use an access scheme such as ALCID or SCONAL to visit that library. Or if you know someone at that university, then you could ask them to send it on to you. You also could email the authors and they might share it with you. You can use our interlibrary loan scheme, which is free. So you don't have to pay for getting a copy of the article, or you can buy it from a publisher, but this can turn out to be expensive, especially if you have a few articles to obtain. Okay, so as I mentioned, EndNote is the reference management tool that's supported by UCD. So EndNote allows you to gather, store, manage, and share references. So with other people that you're working on within the review, you can add references manually from databases and from other sources. And it works in Microsoft Word. You can insert citations and create bibliographies using the Cite While You Write tool. So this is our EndNote library guide, and there you can see Dermot, who is our EndNote expert. So the guide has information about how to add references, how to manage your references, etc., and links to our EndNote training. So for systematic review, the EndNote version of EndNote that you should be using is EndNote 20. So our training is a workbook which you can download, and then a video which you work through. And then this is then supported further by EndNote clinics, which are held at lunchtime during term time. And you can sign up for those through library training. And this is our systematic review guide, which I know Dermot showed on Tuesday as well. So again, it has all the information gathered there for preparing for a systematic review, information on about how to search, and guides and manuals there. So it's all kind of gathered there in one spot for you. Okay, so now at this point, we'd really like your feedback on today's session and on Tuesday's session as well, if you've attended both, or even if you just attended one, just to know how we can improve, what you found helpful, what you might like us to go into more detail, etc. So I think Dermot has put the form there in the chat. So it would be great if you could fill that out there. And while you're filling that out, we'll take any questions you have, so you can put them in chat, or if you're happy to unmute yourself, you can do that and just ask us. Okay, so I'm going to just stop sharing here, and I'm also going to stop recording, okay?